the 14th Discworld novel, Lords and Ladies. So not gonna lie, this is one of my more favorite ones. Like anything that has to do with Lance and with the witches is just ultimately up there. Also, this has so much happening. There are so many things happening in the story, and it's on the rereading that I really do learn to appreciate so much more of all the elements of the stories that is happening. Good lord. So this is the book. The cover illustration is again by Josh Kirby. This is actually a later scene, and it's not a really long one. And oh, the footnotes reappear in this story, and they just add so much. Every single footnote that is in this book is just sublime. So this also comes with a very uncommon foreword by Terry Pratchett. So most of the books in the Discworld series are complete standalone. You can enter into the series at any point. You do not need to read what comes first. Until this book, you definitely benefit from reading Word Sisters first, because what is happening with the witches and with Lance, definitely the relationship between Granny and Margaret, you kind of need to read Word Sisters first. So story-wise, our dear friends, the witches, are returning from their winter-long travels back from Genoa back home to Lance. This is all well and good, except Margaret, who had this like an agreement with Varens, the king of Lance, suddenly finds that she's getting married, and she's like, okay, how? How does he know my measurements? Like, Varens has prepared everything. He set the measurements for her new dresses, for the wedding dress, ceremony, everything. Everything is planned, and she's like a little creeped out. So that is one of the plot points in this story, is this entire thing about the wedding and how Varens knows that they are arriving at this point in time. And I'm getting ahead of myself, because what this story is about is about fairy tales, and it's about quantum physics. And there's only one author who could have ever pulled this off. It's about stories, in a way, not quite like Word Sisters. It's about parallel universes as well as parasitic universes. This has examples of both. We get the witches and we get the wizards. We get the King of Lance and we get the Lords and Ladies. So, and honestly, to properly understand what is happening in this book, to properly understand the references, the various references, I would really recommend this non-fiction by Terry Pratchett and Jacqueline Simpson, which is the folklore of Discworld. If you can't get this book, I would very much recommend it. Mine has yellowed. It has still the age thing that certain like paperbacks do, and I love this book. It's just this. It explains so many things, both about the Lords and Ladies and other stories that we will come to later in the series. So I've been dancing around the subject a little bit, because this is folklore and it's quantum physics. It's parallel universes and parasitic universes, and this is Shakespeare. Very much Shakespeare. This is Midsummer's Dream. through the Discworld eye. The Discworld is a fantasy world. However, there are humans, there are trolls, and there are dwarves, but there hasn't really been any mention of elves for a very good reason. Because in the Discworld canon, elves are bastards. They're not nice, basically, and they are not nice in the way that they have absolute lack of empathy. They cannot sympathize with anyone. They don't really have the perception of other creatures as worthy of consideration. It's just elves and then prey. And there's a running thread throughout this book that if you're lucky, the elves kill you. If you're not lucky, they keep you alive. And I love this book. This book allows, the Discworld allows elves to be not good. And I love it. So basically what is happening is that there's this thing called circle time. And the circle time is essentially when the doorway between worlds becomes thinner. It's not like the dungeon's dimensions. It's when there becomes close to here. It's Elfland. It's the entire thing with we know. And this is something that has happened before with Granny. And and it's so strange, but at the same time fascinating, and to know, like, we know that characters have been young ones. We know about Githok. Githok was very much a libertine before there was such a thing as a libertine. But to think of Granny Weatherwax as having once been just young Esme, being young Esmeralda, running through the hills and through the woods with a young man, but she was quicker, so he eventually gave up, and it turns out that young man, Argentella Mushroom Ridgely. Granny and Argentella Ridgely were summertime lovers. It's so cute. And it's so weird, and it's like, and with them there is this parallel. It's a parallel in the sense that during circle time, the world gets a little bit confused, and there are certain people, such as Granny Weatherwax, whose connection with the world, because she is like a very sensitive receptor to everything that has to do with magic and how the world basically works. And because she is such a strong receptor, that means that she starts picking up the memories of other Esmeralda Weatherwaxes. So for a time she gets very confused about where she stands, and that is not our Granny. Granny knows exactly where she stands. She knows exactly where she is. It's everyone else who is lost. That's just one of the things that is happening here, because there's another running theme, very strong one, of bees. I know, I am not explaining this properly, but I really want you to read the Discworld novels. So if I start with the beginning, probably too late. So we have Margaret settling in at the castle after she and Granny have an argument yet again, because Granny kinda is trying to keep her safe because of what turns out be because of the circle time. Moral, I mean, Granny is doing her best, because at the core of it, she really does care about Margaret. Margaret is someone who matters to Granny, even though Margaret thinks that she doesn't. We get the wizards. We get Mushroom Ridgely, the Argentella. We get the Paupersar, whose mental health is just slipping further and further as we are going. We get Punch Stippens, who is the reader of invisible runes, I think it is. He was a side character in the novel Moving Pictures. the one who was taking the exam instead of Victor Truckle, who was main character of that book. So now poor Punch Sippens is part of the faculty at the university, and he definitely would be more suited in a more logical world such as ours. Like he and Rincewind have that in common. They're not suitable for the Discworld. And then the fourth character of the wizard is the librarian. We get the librarian, and it's awesome. So we get them coming to Lawrence for this Midsummer Festival because of the wedding of the King of Lawrence. That is Verence and Margaret. Their wedding is set for the midsummer. Because on top of that, we also get a younger coven of younger witches, headed by a young girl who has an education and therefore thinks that she knows everything that there is to know. And she challenges Granny Weatherwax. She is that headstrong, like, we can give it to the dear girl, her Diamanda. She does have the strength of character to challenge Granny Weatherwax. The fact that Granny Weatherwax is an actual to the core witch, as a witch is, and not the image of a witch, is kind of beside the point, kind of. But the thing with Diamanda is that she has fallen prey to the Queen of Elves. Because the Elfland, the parasitic world of the Elves, as ruled by the Queen of Elves, that world is trying to get a hold in the Discworld to, like, anchor itself. Because the Elves really like getting into, like, proper worlds in order to wreak havoc and terrorize people and have fun. Like I said, Elves are bastards in this world canon. It's just a thing. So Diamanda has fallen prey to the Queen, and no matter what the older ladies, the older witches try to do, the plot keeps going. And it keeps on going. We also have, and I really love this part of the story, it's the whole plot point with the Jason, the blacksmith of Lawrencetown, who is the oldest son of Naniok. And this just wonderful play of names and professions that Terry Pratchett had with the other men who make up this group, this core group of Morris dancers. They have been charged with setting up a play as made by Huel, the dwarf playwright of the troupe in Word Sisters. The book I was talking about before was Witches of Rod. It's Word Sisters. Another Shakespeare play. So this group of a blacksmith, a weaver, a thatcher, a baker, you know, the usual suspects, they have been trying to practice this play. And their part in the events that unfolds is just when they get to the stick and bucket dance. It's my favorite part. It's my absolute favorite part. Because you have all these threats coming together. You have the this parasitic world of the elves trying to anchor itself onto a Discworld. We have the younger witches that have been weakening the door between. And I didn't even tell you about the dancers. So, the story between worlds is kept closed because of iron. And irony probably, but iron mostly. It's kept closed by these. There are 8 large stones, fairly misshapen, made out of, like, it's kind of like a red stone type of thing. They aren't the most noticeable stones around, but they have been arranged in a circle, basically. And there's nothing that's really, like, mystical about them when you look at them, but they're there. They're up on the top of a mountain top, a hilltop. And the thing is, that is the doorway between worlds. And description of the dancers of the circle of land in between. Clouds part when they pass through. Animals were passed. Birds fly around. Humans, ignore the place. Just bad juju. Very bad juju. When the lighting changes on the outside of the circle, like a cloud passes in front of the sun, there's a moment's difference between here and there. Because in there is the portal to the elf world. And that is a very cold world. It is literally shrouded in winter. And we know that because, of course, some of the characters do pass through. And then because of the play, that like weakens the portal even more, because the play was held up around in the area of the dancers, because the elves were influencing things. The elves pass through, and we get the terror of the elves. Oh yeah, how I love it. And that's just one world of the elves that is accessible from Lancre. That is the world of the Queen of the Elves and her elves. There's another portal, and the first time, like honestly, I actually had to read that passage a few times. First time I read it because I just didn't get a joke. But there's another place where Nani Og takes Casanunda. Yes, we get Casanunda again. He's fun. Where Nani Og takes Casanunda the dwarf with her to visit the Long Man, which is a set of burial mounds. One long, two short. You know, there's a certain hints thrown in there. Said outright and said not quite outright. And underneath that mound is a passage to the other elf world, the one ruled by the King of Elves, who I'm pretty certain is, Oberon Titania. We do know that. But the king and queen are never named, they only get the titles. But the king is this major horned man creature who basically just sits in a longhouse in this like humongous sauna world with his elves and just lounges. He's just relaxing, waiting for the time when the education and people's, like the iron inside people's minds, as they say it, when people will start believing in him again. So he's just waiting it out. Nani goes there basically to ask him, or rather tell him, to come rein his wife in, because, you know, we do not want this time of terror. She does not want that for her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, because obviously she's a very loving, caring family woman. Never mind the fact that she does not care for her daughters-in-law, but... And then there's the entire fight between the witches and the elves, the tortures that the elves are putting people through, and then, oh good lord, you honestly need to read this book, if only for Mr. Boots with his bees, because there's the entire thing with bees. There are so many things that are happening in this book, and it's not just the story itself, it's the references that it's making to so many of English myths and myths from the United Kingdom. there is allusion to the Arthurian legends. There is allusion. They allude to the ballad of, I think it's Tamlin. Please don't quote me on that. I'm not. But yeah, if there's any book that you really, 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 if you love folklore and quantum physics, and you love cats and you love bees, you need to read The Lords and Ladies. It's just, I mean, yeah, reading Witches Abroad really does help to better understand like the connections between the main characters, but I love this book. Ah, so yet another chaotic, spoilerific review of the Discworld novels. But I love this book. I really, really need to recommend this book. It's just, it has so many things to say. It's got Shakespeare, it's got bees, it's got the legends of Tamlin, of Arthurian legends, of so many stories of the elves. They are so... I didn't even mention the unicorn. But yeah, that was my attempt at reviewing the 14th Discworld novel and just geeking over it and just fangirling. I know. But yeah, I really hope that you had fun listening to me ramble on about this book. It's just generally a good place to start, I feel. If you want to start reading about the witches of Flanders, I would definitely, yes. Witches, love them. The next book is, I believe it's Feet of Clay, which brings us back to Ankh-Morpork and back to the Nightwoods. So, thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you some other time, okay? Till then, take care. Bless, bless.